now with quantum physics is asking some questions that are causing scientists to have to, you know, put on their big boy pants and come to the table and say, okay, what does it mean to be human? Because things like the Heisenberg uncertainty or the quantum superposition theory, which have been
Hmm.
demonstrated by some experience, I won't go into it because it's dry. They are pointing to the fact that we create reality. We create our own reality.
This is Health Unfiltered, the podcast where we cut through the bullshit and get honest about fitness, nutrition, and mental wellness.
Ron, welcome. What's good?
Thanks, Josh. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Definitely. I'm really excited to get into this topic. We had a call last week and I got a sneak peek at what you do, and I'm really excited to share it with the audience. So in this episode, we'll be discussing finding balance in science and spirituality, how to supercharge your affirmations to improve your health. So before we get into the topic, I want to learn more about you and how you got to where you are now.
Ha! Well, I guess my journey really started in 1972 when I, as a matter of survival, discovered the Asian martial arts. I was the kid in everybody's school that got beat up 3 times a week, had my bicycle stolen. And that went on until 10th grade when I, through serendipity, discovered karate. Once I became skilled enough to convince people to stop bothering me, I became enchanted, I guess I'd say, with this notion of an internal energy we all have. It's an Eastern concept. It's a vital life force energy. The Chinese call it chi, the Japanese call it ki, the Polynesians call it mana. It's all the same thing. It's the energy that animates us. And so as I learned more and more about it, because of the way my mind works, I started asking, well, if I can use it to hurt people, I should be able to use it to help people as well. And that began a new trajectory of my life. That was my passion. And for 35 years, my profession was I worked as a physicist and engineer for several institutions, among them MIT, Draper Laboratories, Cisco Systems, where I was an engineering consultant, and I was a technical lead for Raytheon's electromagnetic environmental effects group. And so intense, hard-nosed, left brain science. And through my tenure, I began to notice that this energy is not inconsistent. This chi energy is not inconsistent with the laws of electromagnetics. So through this whole process, I became acquainted with people like Donna Eden, who is a world famous energy healer. I spent 2 years learning from her and discovered these very obscure books that were written by a fella named Max Freedom Long back in the 30s and 40s, where he had cracked the code, so he said, cracked the code of the Polynesian and Hawaiian shamans that are called kahunas. And he observed them doing things that we would call miraculous. And so he chronicled the whole process of what he thought they were doing. And I tried to follow his recipe and had so results until I read one of his books. It must have been 20 times. One of the things he said was that they would spend time doing intense breathing and waving of their arms. And that didn't make any sense to me until I asked the question, what if what they were doing was something similar to Qigong, which is a Chinese practice for building up and deploying this energy. So I plugged in what I knew into Max's stuff, and that's when the whole world sparkled. And the results I got were jaw-dropping. And so I brought 20 people through my system, and the ones that did the work, every single one of them had a profound life-transforming experience. And so I wrote a book about it, but I thought I'm not going to publish this until I can convince myself that this is not just a fluke, which is why I brought the 20 people through. So I named my system Master the Science of Miracles, which I like the
Hmm.
name because people often think that science and spirituality are two completely different things. They're not. They are
Right.
different sides of the same coin. And truth is truth. Whether you come about it through spirituality or through science, it doesn't matter. If it's true, it's true. And in fact, the forefathers of quantum physics were wrestling with the fact that their language was insufficient to describe what they were seeing in the laboratories and what they were doing with the colliders and so forth. And so they decided we're going to invent this new language to describe what we're seeing. And so they did. And they were very proud of themselves until someone from outside the community read their stuff and said, this is not new at all. This is the language of mysticism. This is the language that was written, that was used to write the Upanishads 7,000 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, in fact, one of the early fathers of quantum physics, Robert Oppenheimer, was a keen student of Buddhism and Hinduism. So he had already come
Really?
to this conclusion. Yeah, oh yeah. If you watch the movie Oppenheimer, it's fabulous. It's a little bit dry and moves slow, but because I come from that community, I thought it was just spellbinding. And he quoted from one of the books in Hinduism when they were ready to when he realized what the atomic bomb was going to do. And the quote was, I can't quote it exactly, I'll have to paraphrase it, was, I am the God of destruction. And he thought, oh my God, what have we unleashed?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so anyway, not to divert too far, but that's a 50,000-foot view of my last 50 odd years. It took me almost 70 years to figure out what I wanted to do when I grow up, but here we are. So
Finally figured it out.
finally, I'm a late bloomer. What can I say?
Yeah, it's a very interesting journey to go from physics to this, spirituality, science-based kind of practice. It's really, it's interesting how life has its way of taking you down different directions to find what you're meant to do.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And I know now, you know, looking back into my youth, I know the reason that I was a victim of violence so much as a child is because people who are empathic scare other people. They scare muggles, as I call them, to use Harry Potter's word. Um,
Yeah.
you know, we make people uneasy. And as kids can be cruel. I mean, more vicious than any animal in the wild. And so that was why I had the childhood that I had. And even though it was hellish, it kind of stood me in good stead for my trajectory through life. And part of being an empath is that many of us can think out of both sides of our brain at the same time. So, people talk about the left brain versus right brain processing, where left brain is where our analysis, linear thinking, language, mathematics, all that stuff lives. And the right brain is intuition based processing. Emotion, the arts come from the right brain. And so
Hmm.
to be able to operate in both sides simultaneously, again, it makes people uncomfortable. And so, that was my my lot when I worked at MIT was I made my colleagues very uncomfortable because I would say, this is going to fail and here's why and here's what frequency is going to fail at. And they say, how do you know that?
Wow.
And I said, I don't know how I know it. I just know it. You're going to have to spend $200,000 to do the test and find out if I'm right. And they spent the 200 grand and discovered I was right. And that made me even less popular because with scientists, if you can't quantify it, then it doesn't exist. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
It's
that's enough about me.
one of the downfalls about science.
Well, yeah, and really now with quantum physics, it's asking some questions that are causing scientists to have to, put on their big boy pants and come to the table and say, okay, what does it mean to be human? Because things like the Heisenberg uncertainty or the quantum superposition theory, which have been
Hmm.
demonstrated by some experience. I won't go into it because it's dry. They are pointing to the fact that we create reality. We create our own reality.
Hey, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to let you guys know about my workbook that's out. It's available on Amazon. It's the Protein Lifestyle Workbook. After I lost 80 pounds and overcame IBS and depression and food addiction, I was inspired to share my story and try to help as many people as I can. So I wrote a book, Living the Protein Lifestyle. Then I decided to write a workbook to really help people develop those healthy habits that they need to lose weight and overcome lifestyle disease. There it is, right there. And it's available now on Amazon. The Protein Lifestyle Workbook. If you're looking to lose weight for summer, or you don't want to take a statin, or your doctor says that you need to get on some other drug for the rest of your life, consider getting your shit together and building the healthy habits that you need to improve your health, enjoy your life to the fullest, and get shit done. The Protein Lifestyle Workbook. Check it out on Amazon. Now back to the show.
And interesting, it was one of those forefathers. His name was Erwin Schrodinger.
Hmm.
And someone asked Dr. Schrodinger how many minds express the consciousness of the universe. And he said one. So we
Really?
all, yeah, we are all facets. We're all um, splinters of that one mind. But
Part of
follow
the
that,
same
follow that.
consciousness.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Mother Teresa was asked one time, she was a nun in Calcutta, India. She had a mission there for years. And somebody asked her, Mother Teresa, how is it that you can go out into the squalor and the disease and the poverty of Calcutta and still keep your faith? And she said, every day I go out into the squalor and the disease and the poverty of Calcutta, and I see the face of Jesus Christ in every face I look at. Now, it doesn't matter whether
Wow.
you're a Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, it doesn't matter. We all are expressions of that one creator. We are all that.
Mm.
We are the creator. And so, and when we can look at each other and see that creator in them, that's what namaste means from the Hindu tradition. That the
Mm.
divine in me salutes the divine in you in a place where we are all one.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so now science is catching up with that, much to the chagrin of many scientists who hate that idea. And that's a whole
Hmm.
different story. Let's not go into that. But
Yeah. So Schrodinger is the cat guy, the
yes,
cat in the
exactly
box
right.
guy.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
It's so hard to wrap your mind around that concept.
yes, it is.
That
It is.
superposition.
Yes, yes. Thank you. You said exactly right. It is a superposition. It does not collapse until you view it. So
Hmm.
your
Until it's
expectation.
observed.
Yes, when you observe it, was your expectation that the cesium had released and killed the cat, or was your expectation that the cat is still alive?
Hmm.
That's what is a determining issue. And that's
Yeah,
a tough one, and especially Westerners to get their heads around.
definitely. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Well,
Um,
my ex-wife used to say that she knew when I was studying the weird courses in university because I walk in my sleep and talk in my sleep.
yeah, walking around the house, talking about crazy,
Who
crazy
knows
stuff.
what? Yeah.
Hmm. Quantum computing, all that
Okay.
that
Yeah.
stuff with um, what is it? Is it atoms, I guess, that can be in different places, or it's.
Yeah, they're different states. They're different states. And so
Hmm.
because there's a superposition of states, it's the observer that determines whether it's a one or a zero. And that's
Hmm.
really out there. And so the implication is that this can operate with infinite speed. and at pretty close to infinite speed. The only thing that limits it is the physical drag of the system. So
Right.
yeah, it's
And
a
that
really
new quantum chip that they just came out with, they were doing some testing and they were able to solve a problem, I guess, that they said it would take like to the end of time to solve that problem, to have enough computing
right.
power, but they were able to do it in several minutes. And they were speculating that it was using computing power from other dimensions or other
Okay,
universes.
so yes. So now we're getting into an area we could go down a rabbit hole with. Um,
We could definitely go down a rabbit
yeah,
hole with
so
this.
let's kind of pull back from that because that gets into some weirdness that will probably bore your listeners. So let's kind of reset our trajectory here because that does get really wild really fast. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I'm fascinated that maybe we could have a separate episode where we get more into
okay, if you want.
that kind of stuff. Definitely. All right, well, let's circle back. Um, Master the Science of Miracles. That's your program,
It is.
and it claims to help people transform their thoughts into reality. What makes this different from all other manifestations, law of attraction methods out there?
That's a great question, Josh. Um, Most of the law of attraction based systems say that your thoughts become things. That's what Mike Dooley's big thing is.
Hmm.
The issue here is that it is our subconscious we're talking to when we have our thoughts, and our subconscious does not speak English or whatever your first language is, does not speak that. It
Hmm.
speaks the language of emotion, of memory, of imagery. So if you are languaging what you desire in words, your subconscious is not going to hear you. It's not going to understand.
Okay,
You have to talk to it in its language. And part of
makes sense.
the process of Master the Science of Miracles is to create a multi-sensory thought form of your desired outcome. Now, how do you do that? Well, you do that by first creating a word picture of what it is, how your life is going to be when you have achieved whatever it is you desire to do, to be, or to have. So, word picture, right? Then convert that word picture into what people like Charles Webster Leadbeater from the Theosophical Society used to call a thought form. Now, this
Hmm.
is where you have a mental picture of your life as it's going to be. What will you be seeing? What will you be hearing? And most important, what will you be feeling when your life has changed insofar as you have achieved your desired outcome? Once you've done that, then convert it into a mental video. And imagine you're sitting in a movie theater and you're watching the movie of Josh on the screen, where Josh is now in the place where he has achieved his desired outcome. And you watch that on a loop again and again and again. And as you are watching this video, you imagine standing up from your seat in the theater, walking up to the movie screen, stepping into the movie screen, and becoming the star. Now you've associated into that memory from the future.
Wow.
Now, the secret sauce here is to illuminate that whole movie that you're now starring in with emotions like joy, gratitude, happiness, elation, all those things. And so that I lead my students through a process of first recalling a time when you were feeling those high vibration emotions. And as you associate into that memory, you are instructed to affirm that these feelings you're experiencing are part of you, every bit as much as your eyes, your nose, your fingers, your toes. And
Hmm.
since they're a part of you, you can choose to experience them whenever you decide to. When you were in these situations, you decided it was appropriate to be in awe or overcome with emotion. If, for instance, if people who have had children, the moment you held your newborn child, or looking out at the image of a morning where the mist clears and there's a breathtaking mountain. In those moments, all thought stops and you're just in that moment. You're experiencing the awe of existence. And that's you. That's a part of you. So now when you step into your mental video, you recall those emotions. That's what ignites your thoughts. That's what sends your thoughts through your subconscious to your transcendent self, the part of you that's created in the image and likeness of all that, of the creator of all that is. Whether you call that God or Allah or Yahweh, a Huda Mazda, Wakan Tonka, the universe, doesn't matter what you call it because we can't comprehend it anyway, but you send that illuminated multisensory thought form to that part of yourself. And that's when the magic happens.
That's fascinating. And so you work with your students and take them through different techniques to achieve this state.
Yeah, there's a series of exercises that are necessary to prepare you to do this work, because most of us have been operating on autopilot through our lives, and do the same thing over and over and over again. You know, and the definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And
Yes, it
so
is.
we have to make a change in how we operate. Part of that is to recognize that the reason we do the things we do is because we have been programmed to do them. Your audience, your listeners may be familiar with the idea of the inner brainwave states. So right now, you and I are operating at the beta brainwave state, which is between 15 and 25, 26 cycles per second. We're fully conscious. We're operating in our left brain almost completely. When you daydream, when you begin to fall asleep, when you go into meditation, or when you get hypnotized, you move into the alpha brainwave state. And so in the alpha state, your mind is no longer constrained by time and space. And I'll come back to that because that's important.
Yeah.
So part of the process is I give my students an exercise, a recorded exercise. It's 27 minutes long. I ask them to listen to it every day for 30 days, at least once. And the goal is to stay awake through the whole exercise. And what it does is it trains you to go to alpha and stay awake and alert. Because we've been conditioned, when we go to alpha, we fall asleep. And when a person avails themselves of the services of a hypnotherapist, the therapist will induce you into a hypnotic state and induce amnesia, so that any post-hypnotic suggestions they give you, you don't recall them, and you begin operating in a new subconscious program.
Wow.
And so the issue with that is they're moving you from beta to alpha. The way I do it, your conscious awareness is expanding to encompass both beta and alpha at the same time. So when you can do that, now you're operating as a true human being, a fully functioning human being. And it turns out that the thoughts we focus on when we're in the alpha brainwave state have a greater effect on physical reality than those same thoughts focused on at the beta brainwave state.
Wow.
And so when you reclaim the capacity to be at alpha and to be fully awake and alert, now you have a superpower. And that superpower is you're using your whole brain. And you can now, if you use affirmations, they become much more effective. The reason most affirmations fail is because people affirm things that they believe they want at beta. Well, your critical faculty knows it's not true. So let's say a person is overweight, and they affirm, I am at my ideal weight. They do it at beta. Well, their critical faculty knows that is not true, and they experience anxiety because they've lied to themselves.
Mm.
If you go to alpha and do it there, your mind is not constrained by time and space. So you can affirm something that will happen in the future, and there's no cognitive dissonance. And that's why this is so powerful. And that's one of the areas where most law of attraction systems fall off the rails. They don't talk about, I just told you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's incredible. Is there any indication in your experience as to how being in that alpha state um that makes those changes real in the physical world?
Yes, with a caveat that there are other things that go on. Um, Oftentimes, what will happen is that even at alpha, when you begin to assert these things, you may experience some backlash, some anxiety, and that's because of something I call our personal demons. And these aren't things with horns. The personal demons are all the things we have been programmed with since birth. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm too fat. I'm too thin. I'm too old. I'm too young. Blah, blah, blah. It's all nonsense.
Yeah.
And when we bump up against those subconscious beliefs, and they are subconscious because in large part, we are exposed to them in the first 5 or 6 years of our lives. Well, the first 4 years of our lives, we're at the delta state. So anything we are exposed to goes in really, really deeply, which is why childhood trauma is so difficult to remediate. The two best ways, in my humble opinion, and this is my opinion, the two best ways to remediate childhood trauma is a hypnosis-based and or an energy-based intervention. Because both of them make an end run around the conscious filter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna ask, so Master of the Science of Miracles, that's an energy-based method?
Both. It's both.
Okay.
The centering exercise is a form of self-hypnosis. I actually borrowed components of my centering exercise from Jose Silva. I'm a certified trainer in the Silva Ultramind system. And
Mm-hmm.
so I saw the value of what Jose was doing. And my centering exercise is slightly different, but I borrowed some of his words to be able to revivify in my students the realization that our sensing faculties are unbounded. And this is something that comes from physics also, that in reality, separation is an illusion. So when I say that you and I are one, that's not a metaphor. In truth, we are. And so one of the things that Jose used to use in his centering exercise was the affirmative statement that I am now able to attune my intelligence by developing my sensing faculties and to project them to any point or place on this planet, so as to be aware of any actions taking place if this is necessary and beneficial for humanity. And what Jose never touched on was this isn't just spatial. It's also temporal, which means that you can project yourself to the future or to the past.
Mm.
And again, this is where the power of doing this lives, is that you mentioned, I think it was you mentioned the idea of quantum superposition. Okay, so in quantum, and one of the things that demonstrated quantum superposition was an experiment that was done that was called the double slit experiment.
I'm
So
familiar,
originally,
yeah.
back in the 19th century, there was an experiment done where there was a light source, like a projector, there was a screen, and then in between the light source and the screen was a barrier that had two slits in it. So when they shone the light at the two slits, what they got was an interference pattern, because light is a wave, it's a sinusoid. And so in areas when these two virtual light sources now exist, their waves are going to interfere with each other. So you see the series of light and dark bands on the screen.
Yeah.
So fast forward to the 20th century, and we ran this at the quantum level using electrons. They had the same setup, but now it was sub-miniature. And they fired electrons because electrons are particles, right? So it should be like paintballs, little paintballs,
Right.
and fire a bunch of them at the two slits, and you should get two discrete lines of stuff. Well, they didn't. They got an interference pattern.
Yeah.
And the physicists said, WTF, how can this be? So, exactly what they said. Physicists cuss like longshoremen. So if I let something slip, please forgive me.
It's all good. We encourage.
So they
Excellent.
said, all right, we're going to fire these electrons one at a time. Bit, 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 bit. Let go for an hour. What happens? They looked at the screen. It was an interference pattern. Now, mathematically, that says that each electron went through slit A, and each electron went through slit B, and each electron went through both slits, and each electron went through neither. Again, the famous formula WTF. So they said, okay, we got to figure this out. So they put a sensor and electron detector at the barrier. And so the detector would register each time an electron transgressed the barrier. And let it run for an hour, and what they got was two discrete lines. Why?
Because they were measuring.
Because
They
there
were
was an
observing.
observer. More
Yeah.
importantly, the detector acted as an agent of the physicist who had the expectation this should be two discrete lines. Now, what does that mean for my system? It means that each time we step into the future, I step forward, now I'm in a second in the future later than I was when I was back there. Well, the only reason that I step into the same reality is because I expect to. So when you create a thought form at alpha, and that thought form is a vivid, multi-sensory video of your life as it's going to be, and you participate in it with emotion, you've collapsed the singularity. So it no longer is superposed, it is now collapsed into a definite future. I forget who it was said the best way to predict the future is to create it, and this is how you do it. And because you're at alpha, there's no cognitive dissonance. So I can say to myself, in my future, I'm going to have a full head of hair. And when I step into that, when I don't care if I have a head of hair or not, you can see my flaxen locks here. Whatever it is you project into the future, as long as you can accept it, then it will happen. And you have to do this repeatedly. And that comes back to your original question. How do you know this is happening? When you do this, and I have a symbol I would show if I could share my screen. The symbol, the ancients used symbols to do two things. One was to communicate their wisdom to their students, and the other was to conceal it from the people who were not their students. And so this symbol depicts the interaction between the three parts of ourselves, our conscious self, our subconscious self, and our transcendent self. So when you send your intention by way of this multisensory thought form to your transcendent self, the way you can tell when your transcendent self has received and accepted is you experience something called the rain of blessings. And the rain of blessings can be anything from a light tingling around the crown of your head, sweating under your eyes, tingling in your fingers, all the way to overwhelming waves of gratitude and joy that come out of nowhere. You're just overcome with joy. One of my early students, when she came to me, she said she was never able to reliably get into a meditative state. So I taught her how to do that. And I said, now just focus on what it is you desire and do it at alpha so that there's no dissonance, and do it as though it's
Hmm.
right now. So in the alpha state, your mental video is that right now, today, this moment, this is who I am. And she contacted me about 2 weeks later, and she said, Ron, I think I'm going nuts. And I said, well, congratulations, what's up? And she said, when I start to meditate in the morning, within 20 seconds, my eyes are just flooding with tears of gratitude. I'm just overcome with this gratitude. And I said, well, congratulations, my love. You have been touched by your transcendent self. It is telling you it's received what you asked for and it's working on it. And sure enough, the thing she asked for became her reality.
Wow.
This is
That's so
physics.
powerful.
It is powerful beyond our belief, Josh. This is way
Hmm.
bigger than me, way bigger than me. And if I live to be 1,000 years old, I'll never understand why I was allowed to be the vessel that brought this forth. That is a complete mystery of why some dope like me was given the bounty of bringing this forward. And maybe it was because I'm one of those weird guys that loves mathematics and physics as much as I love martial arts and Tai Chi. I don't know. Who knows? I've stopped questioning.
Yeah.
But this is something that is part of the human experience. This is what it means to be human. And the
Hmm.
media has been weaponized for the past 60 years to create a culture of stupidity, gullibility, and cowardice in our culture. So when people ask the question, why don't humans heal themselves? It's because they believe they can't. And that
Mm.
belief has been programmed into them.
Yeah. And do
Sorry
you
for the
believe
rant.
that that's no, no, it's welcomed. I mean, it's very interesting everything you're saying. And so do you believe that we've been programmed this way to take advantage of us,
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely. Completely.
monetary purposes? Because
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
yeah.
there was a think tank that still exists, still going on at Harvard University. It formed back in the late 60s, early 70s, called Project Zero.
Okay.
And Project Zero, you've heard of it?
No, I haven't.
Um, Project Zero was formed for the express purpose of understanding how humans acquire learning. And this was a multi-decade study where they looked at people from birth until the age of about 20. What they discovered was at birth, within normal parameters, people possess the ability to process information at the level of Einstein or Da Vinci or Heisenberg. And
Really?
then by the age of 20, 98% of people had lost their genius mentality. And where the genius dip began to really present was around the age of 7.
Why is that?
Because at 7 years old, we enter school. And schools are there to program us to be good
Mm.
consumers.
Good
Jose
workers.
Silva, yeah, exactly, to
Yeah.
conform, to not ask questions. Critical thinking, forget that. Anybody who's a
Mm.
critical thinker in school not only gets persecuted by their peers, by their teachers as well. And
Yeah.
so Jose Silva discovered that the reason, and it was actually was validated by Project Zero, was the reason this happens is because the education system focuses almost entirely on left brain learning to the exclusion, in some cases, demonization of right brain. So now
Hmm.
our right brain capacities, intuition, arts, emotion, those are relegated to a few courses during the course of our education. The rest of it is all reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah.
So once you are taught how to revivify that right brain capacity, then you begin thinking like a true human again.
Mm,
And so, yes, and the reason why the education system is devised in this way is to make us compliant. There, I was watching, I forget what the show was. A lot of these movies that are out there are what I call soft disclosure. They are telling us what's going on without telling us what's going on. And
yeah.
I forget what the show was, but it was talking about uh, a Native American activist. John was his first name. I can't think of his last name. But the FBI had a file on him, and they said, this man is extremely intelligent, and therefore he is extremely dangerous. Now
Mm,
think about that. He's extremely intelligent, and therefore he is extremely dangerous because he was a critical thinker.
yeah. You can see through the bullshit.
Yeah, you can. You can. And once you see through the bullshit, then you have a real, you're at a crossroads. Which
Mm,
road will you take? Will you conform or will you take the road less traveled? And the road
yeah.
less traveled is painful, but once you see the truth, you can't go back. It'll drive you mad to try and go back because you're denying who you are.
Yeah. I've struggled with that for years.
Of
I feel
course,
like
all of us
my
have.
eyes were
Yes.
opened since
Yep.
I was young, maybe in my, early teens or even younger. I've always known that, you know, felt like everything was bullshit.
Yep.
I felt like I could really see the patterns. I have ADD. I have that superpower of the pattern
Exactly.
recognition, and I just
Yes.
see the patterns and things, and I know, oh, this is why they're doing that. And a lot of stuff is just set up to make money and control us, and it's really a
It is.
shame.
It is. Some of the most brilliant people in history had ADD. Einstein
Yeah,
invented ADD.
yeah. I
Robin
feel
Williams.
like I feel like even ADD, the terminology, attention deficit disorder, is a negative
It is
thing to
exactly
make you
right.
think that it's an impairment, when in reality it's really a superpower to help you,
Absolutely.
think of so many different things all the time, and just your mind is just always going. And if you can harness that, you can do a lot with it. And
Well, the
school
other
is
side,
definitely not designed for
that's
that.
right. That's right. Exactly right. The other side of that is people with ADD or ADHD. Once we find something that fascinates us, we can focus on it to the exclusion of everything else.
Hmm.
And that's when the superpower comes in. So
Yeah,
once you lock on to your thing, the thing that makes your eyes light up, then everything else becomes noise. There's a really
yeah.
famous story about when Einstein was at Princeton and he had just he had his first child and Planck was there as well. So Planck came over and
Mm.
called Einstein, and Einstein was sitting there working on whatever it was he was working on. He's rocking his baby on his arm, and the flue in the wood stove backed up and filled the whole um, apartment with smoke. And Planck was trying to have a conversation with Einstein. He was so focused on what he was doing, he couldn't hear his child screaming. He was oblivious to the smoke, and he didn't know Planck was there. Finally, Planck got disgusted and left. But
Wow.
that is what happens to people like us. Is once we focus on something that fascinates us, and I'm sure this is true for you as well, everything else fades away. That's part of the
Mm.
superpower.
Yeah,
So now
yeah, it is.
turn that laser focus to something of benefit to you and to others. That's
Hmm.
what lights it up. I hope without losing power here. My lamp is misbehaving, but so
Oh
far we're good.
yeah, I saw the flicker there.
Yeah, I might just need to change the bulb. So,
Mm. All right, no worries. So we've been talking a lot about science and spirituality, and I know those two things don't always mix well. How do you respond to skeptics when they question you about your methods?
well, the methods speak for themselves. The old adage, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Um,
Hmm.
as I mentioned in the early part of this session, science and spirituality are really just two sides of the same coin. So, because I claim this as a scientific endeavor, then it has to the scientific method has to apply. So the scientific method is I propose a hypothesis, or you do whatever. I say, okay, this is what I believe, and I can try a test to test my hypothesis, and then I adjust my hypothesis based on the results. So
Hmm.
I should be able to If I produce a result, I should be able to say, "Hey, Josh, this is what I did. This is my apparatus. This is my process. This is my procedure. These are my results. Here, you do it, and tell me what you get."
Hmm.
And so that is part of the reliable, repeatable nature of what I'm doing. Is that it's based on sound first principles. Whether we're talking about them from the perspective of science or from spirituality, doesn't matter. If
Yeah.
it's truth, it should be able to be reproduced again and again and again within acceptable levels of statistical variation. We should be
Hmm.
able to get the same results each time.
That is the scientific method.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've eaten the pudding. I've seen the light. Last week we spoke on the phone, discussing our this podcast, and you did a session with me. I was struggling with cravings of vaping and something that I've been dealing with, and we did a little session together, and I got to tell you, it really, really helped. I
Well,
mean,
I'm so
immediately
glad,
after
Josh.
our session, yeah. And if you're still up for it, I think we were going to do a part two today here
Sure,
live on the show.
sure. Yeah. So what I introduced you to last week was called the emotional freedom technique, and I borrowed it from
Hmm.
that community to put into Master the Science of Miracles. But I do it along with another modality, which is using a series of points, energy points, that are mostly in your excuse me, mostly in your head and in your face, called neurovascular points. They were discovered
Hmm.
back in the 30s by a chiropractor whose name was Terence Bennett. And what he discovered was that when, by using radioactive dyes, injecting them into his patients, he was able to use a fluoroscope and see that as people held these points, the blood flow in their bodies would change.
Wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Dr. Bennett gave his life to this because he used this radioactive dye so many times it killed him. He contracted
Yeah.
cancer because of it. But the contribution he made to science is just massive. So, what I'm going to do with you, Josh, is I'm going to ask you to choose something right now that is irritating. It makes you angry. It gives you stress. It makes you anxious, worried, sad. Nothing too big. Nothing uh, life threatening for right now. Okay, I'll just give you a
Hmm.
moment to think about something that bugs you, and let me know when you've got it.
Let's see. Something that bugs me. Got it.
You got it? Okay,
Hmm.
so uh, there are two pairs of points, neurovascular points. One of the pairs is a point right in front of the top of the opening in each ear, right where I'm pointing here. And the other points are right here in what's called the main frontal eminences in the head. So what I'm going to
Hmm.
ask you and your viewers to do is to take your thumbs and just press them on these points I'm holding right now like this. You can slip them underneath your cans if you want to. And then take your fingers, like I'm doing, and press your middle fingers together. Close your fingers together, Josh. There you go. And now pull them out slightly. Okay, now that you're like that, what I want you to do is to just relax and take a few long, slow, deep breaths as you focus on the thing that's bugging you. Okay? And as you're holding them, you may feel pulses begin to form, both in front of your ears and in your forehead. And as those pulses begin to present, they may begin to synchronize. That's it. And when you're ready, just relax and let your hands rest in your lap. So now when you think about the thing that's bugging you, tell me if it's the same, if it bugs you the same way.
Feels less, slightly less.
And here's why. When something causes worry or stress or anxiety, we go into what's called a fight-flight response.
Mm-hmm.
Now, physiologically, when the fight-flight response, and it's a response that is that has assured the survival of the human race for all these millions of years we've been here. Physiologically, when we go into that response, the blood in our brain flows into the central part of our brain, an area called the amygdala, which is where fight-flight lives.
Yeah.
When we hold these points like this, the blood begins to flow out of the amygdala and into the main frontal cortex, which is the part of us that makes us human. So whatever is causing you the distress is still there, but now you're able to relate to it as a human and not as a house cat or a whatever other animal, a subspecies. So now you're able to deal with it more responsibly. Now, I use this as a part of a two-part process. The other part is what's called emotional freedom technique. And last week, when we were talking on Zoom like we are now, I led you through a process of affirming where you find a spot or two spots in your chest. Usually, it could be just above and outside your nipples. And they're called sore spots. And the reason they're sore is because that's clogged energy. As you rub those and you affirm 3 times, even though I have this problem, whatever it is, I deeply and completely love, accept, appreciate, and forgive myself. And then once you've done that 3 times, you tap through the points like we did together. Eyebrow, side of eye, under eye, upper lip, lower lip, collarbone, and underarm. Those are major acupuncture points. They're terminal points for the acupuncture meridians. When you have something that's going on that's bothering you, it could be an emotional issue, it could be pain in your body. The energy of that gets expressed in these systems in our body called meridians. They come from Chinese acupuncture. They're like wires that run through your body. So when you imagine that you're in your house and all of a sudden the power goes out and you know that the breakers have blown, but you don't know which breaker it is. So you go downstairs to the breaker box and you reset all the breakers and then set them again and the lights come back on. Doesn't matter which one it was because you just brought power back on. That's analogous to what we're doing here. We don't know exactly which energy is being most affected or most affecting our emotional state, so we zero them all out. And acupuncture points, all they are is low impedance points that allow you to enter the energy system easily. So by tapping, by pinching, by using a needle, you're able to modulate the energy in the meridian, which is expressing your anxiety, and the meridian resets and there's no longer any basis for the anxiety. So again, we've made an end run around our critical factor, on our conscious block. Because if I say to you, oh, Josh, don't worry about that, that's as useful as tits on a bull. But if I say, okay, your energy system is scrambled and you begin to reset your energies, all of a sudden, like you experienced with your cravings, they went away. Because it was an energetic expression, not a physiological expression. In the energy medicine field, energy healing field, it's believed that a dis-ease, any kind of an insult, dis-ease, appears first in the energy system. And if it's not remediated there, it moves into the emotional system. And if it's not remediated there, then it becomes physical. And I've told my friends, I have friends who have had physical ailments. And I told them, if you don't clear the energetic part of your illness or injury, it will come back as something else. You can have surgery and it will come back as something else. And they did, and it did.
Mm.
And they had to go through a bunch of surgeries before this person's spouse called me and said, can you please help my spouse? My spouse is in pain. And I said, okay, fine. So I did, and the pain went away. Now, if this person had simply asked for that before they had surgery, they could have saved themselves a whole bunch of pain and money and discomfort. But we've been programmed for cowardice, stupidity, and gullibility. So when the commercial is playing happy music, it says, ask your doctor if this is right for you. That's an embedded command. It's a hypnotic command.
Yeah.
And we buy it. We believe it.
I feel like we're so easily swayed.
Oh, we
And
are.
there's so much of that programming and entertainment and commercials.
Yes,
It's hard to
exactly.
avoid.
Yeah. And the thing, I'm glad you said that, Josh, because our subconscious, what the shamans call the subconscious self, because they see it as a discrete being, just like the conscious self, discrete being that interlocks and forms the person we see when we look in the mirror. The subconscious self is extremely powerful. It controls all of our involuntary functions in our body. So our blood pressure, our heartbeat, our digestion, movement of lymph, blah, blah, blah. All of these involuntary functions are maintained and controlled by our subconscious. And thank God, because if we had to consciously regulate that, we'd be dead in 10 seconds.
We'd go
That's
mad.
Huh?
We'd go crazy. We had to
We'd
think
be
about all that
dead.
stuff.
We'd be dead.
Yeah.
Our subconscious, as powerful as it is extremely susceptible to suggestion. Both suggestion from you and suggestion from the outside world. And so we talked about this before we went live on the show here, that I don't think we talked about this after you started to record, but your subconscious takes everything you say as a command. A command. And so if I go to a restaurant and the food is absolutely out of this world, I might come and say to you, Josh, that food was to die for.
Yeah.
We've just told our subconscious that food's going to kill me. Because it takes everything we say as a command. It does not understand irony. It does not understand being facetious. It does not understand just kidding.
Metaphors.
That's right. It takes everything literally. So when we say that, we're programming our subconscious. So
So
when
fascinating.
when somebody says that, what I do is I say to myself, cancel, cancel. Because now I'm telling my subconscious, disregard that. And my students, I drive them crazy. You know, they'll say something, I'll say, cancel, cancel. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ron. So when this happens, we overuse the death word way too much. You know, my back
Yeah.
is killing me. Cancel, cancel.
Cancel that.
Yeah, cancel that. So that's a freebie that I give to you and your viewers. The other one is based on some work that was done in the 19th century by a French psychiatrist whose name was Emile Coué. What Dr. Coué discovered was that when he trained his patients, when he trained his patients to start every day by saying, every day and in every way, I am getting better, better, and better. That the ones who did that every day experienced a material improvement in their lives. So Jose Silva once again decided, well, this is really powerful. Let me teach my students to use that. Whenever somebody asks you, how are you doing? Most will say, oh, not bad. Well, your subconscious does a lousy job of processing a negative. So when I say
Hmm.
not bad, my subconscious hears I'm doing bad. And that's a
Right.
command.
Focuses on the negative.
That's right. So whenever somebody asks me, how are you doing? I always say better and better
I like that.
because you're programming your subconscious and your friend's subconscious as well. And
Hmm.
once in 50 times, someone's going to say to you, why do you say that? And you can tell them, well, it's because your subconscious takes everything you say as a command. So when I say better and better, I'm telling my subconscious, I am doing better and better, make it happen. And it does.
Yeah, that's really incredible. I use that phrase in my daily affirmations every day in every way, better and better,
That's it.
and say it out loud and do it 10 times.
Yep.
And I find that it really helps, just even my state of mind, just to be more in a positive light. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's having a physical effect. I'm sure it is. I haven't quite noticed it yet, but it really does help, even just on the mental level.
Well, here's a hack you can use. And that is before you say your affirmation, hold the neurovascular points until you feel
Uh,
yourself settle in and relax. The reason you're settling in and relaxing is because you're shifting into the alpha state.
mhm.
Then, very calmly, very quietly, repeat your affirmation 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you could tell or the audience could tell, but when I did that earlier, I really noticed a difference. I really
Your physical
felt
state.
much more relaxed.
Yep.
It's really powerful.
It's very
I'm
powerful.
really,
Very, very
really
powerful.
happy we're talking about all this,
I'm glad.
bringing it to
I
light.
I love talking about this stuff.
Me too. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. Um, a lot of high achievers, people that have had a lot of success, sometimes lack fulfillment. And I wanted to know what's the biggest reason that they feel empty, and how does your program fix that?
That's a really great question, Josh. Um, when we conflate material success with happiness and fulfillment, we're chasing a false deity. Um, if a person is doing something only for the money, they may experience success and often do experience success, but they do so at the cost of their humanity. I mean, there are so many high achievers who are miserable, whose
Hmm.
kids commit suicide. God help us. Um, and the reason for that is they've lost touch with who they truly are. And one of the exercises that I use to help people to reclaim that part of themselves is to recall a time once again when you were in awe of a sunset or at the ocean, or maybe it was out in the country under a night sky where the stars were brilliant and you were just overcome with rapture, or you held your newborn child for the first time. All of those are peak states. And
Hmm.
when that happens, all thought stops. And you're a human being and not a human doing. And in that moment, you are reminded of the majesty of who you are, because you are the universe. You are the
Yeah.
universe. Um, and they lose touch with that. So, what Master the Science of Miracles does is helps people to refocus on what their true life's purpose is. And then using the same techniques I use for everyone else, helping them craft a multi-sensory thought form to get back to the reality of who they are. Once they have done that, to get back to their true self.
Hmm.
And that is when the joy of life returns. People are fond of misquoting a verse in the Bible that says money is the root of all evil. That's a misquote. It comes from
I've heard that.
First Timothy chapter 6, verse 10 says, love of money is the root of all kinds of evil.
Mm,
So there's nothing wrong with being rich. It is, why are you rich? Why are you pursuing riches? If it's to serve humanity, if it's to use your wealth to improve others' lives, then you'll be blessed beyond your imagination. If it's just to acquire riches, then your life will be empty.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, Ron, what do you think the biggest belief people need to challenge in order to start seeing real transformation using master the science of miracles?
The biggest belief they need to challenge is that they're mediocre. We are, in fact, the creator. Capital
Mm-hmm.
T, capital C, the creator. There was a 19th century prisoner and martyr whose name was Syed Ali Muhammad, who
Mm-hmm.
said, and I quote, "Behold with the eye of thy heart how the reality of thy being is the divinity of thy Lord revealed unto thee and through thee. Thou art he himself, and he is thou thyself, except that thou art, and he is that he is." And once we accept that, once we accept the fact that we have absolute dominion over our lives and begin to
Mm-hmm.
act as such and have tools to clear away the false beliefs we've been programmed with, that's when we can begin to change our lives in a big way. It's not as hard as you think it is, but it's as hard as you think it is.
Mm. Just that simple belief is really the key.
That's the first step. That's the first
Yeah,
step. And belief is a profound thing. It's one thing to say, "Oh, I believe I'm going to be rich." Well, do you really? Do you really?
truly.
Because when
Yeah.
you say that, tell me what you're really feeling inside.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not aligned with what you said, then you've got some work to do.
Yeah.
That's a personal demon. That feeling that you're experiencing, that's a personal demon. You need to clear that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the first step.
Very cool. Well, we've covered a lot of stuff today, and
Oh
I
man,
have a
have we ever?
million more questions. But was there anything else that you wanted to discuss today before we start wrapping
No,
things
thank you
up?
so much for giving me the opportunity to be here with you. I really enjoyed it. And I hope
Yeah, me
that
too.
this benefits your viewers. And if someone would like to contact me, they can contact me at ron at masterthescienceofmiracles.com.
And the master of the sciences .com is also your website.
It is. Yeah, right now it's in flux because I've had some challenges with the system I'm going to use to instantiate my website. So my
Hmm.
son, my webmaster, he's taking care of that. But we've had a false start with a service provider, so we're kind of recovering from that. So,
Okay. All right,
but
great. Well,
I
if
do.
you're up for it, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I do offer uh, if people need to contact me, if they need a session with me or they want to enter a coaching engagement with me, I'm open for that because uh, we all have the capability to do this work, but not everybody has the capability necessarily to have faith in themselves, and they allow their unconscious beliefs to derail them, and they get discouraged and quit.
Hmm.
And so that's why I included the demon demolisher as part of the system for that very reason.
Excellent. I highly recommend working with Ron. He's very knowledgeable and very skilled at what he does, and I felt an immediate change after working together.
I'm
Um,
so glad, Josh. It makes me very happy.
definitely.
You know where to find
And
me if you need.
so definitely. So if you're up for it, I'd like to finish off the episode by playing a game where you pick a number 1 through 3, and that'll determine a question that you answer to end the episode.
Okay, so one of my favorite numbers is three, so let's do with that.
Excellent. So, question three is a weird one. What is the weirdest thing in your refrigerator or freezer right now?
The weirdest thing in my refrigerator. I wish you'd asked me yesterday. Can I throw it out?
You can go with that one. That's fine. It's still relevant.
I had meatloaf in there that had been there since the flood, and I discovered it
Oh
growing hair in the
boy.
back of the fridge. So,
Oh man. Some hairy
but yeah,
meatloaf.
we have all kinds of weird stuff. My wife and I are both very much aligned with alternative healing and nutrition. So we have all kinds of
Mhm.
different kinds of probiotics and things like that. So I think
Cool.
everything in my fridge is weird.
Nice. Yeah, the hairy meatloaf was a good answer.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Ron. I really
Thank you,
appreciate your
Josh.
time and thank you for sharing and helping
My
us cut
pleasure
through the
indeed.
bullshit.
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Okay. Bye, everybody.